In the most anticipated wedding of the year, an unlikely sound echoes through the cathedral, and what seemed like a fairy tale turns into the beginning of a secret no one was ready to discover. The golden morning light flooded Lauren Paxton's bedroom through the silk curtains. The day had arrived, the one that should be the happiest of her life. From the window of her suite in the family mansion in Portland, Lauren gazed at the horizon, while stylists and makeup artists prepared in the adjacent room. "Miss Lauren, it's time to start your makeup," announced Sophie, her personal makeup artist, with a melodious voice that failed to pull Lauren from her thoughts. As usual, the first thing Lauren did upon waking was to look out the window to check if Max, her beloved black horse, was grazing in the field. Strangely, he wasn't there. In 10 years, this was the first time this had happened. "Has anyone seen Max today?" she asked, trying to hide her concern. "I haven't seen him, miss." "Perhaps August knows," replied Mrs. Nelson, the housekeeper who had cared for her since childhood. Lauren tried to push away the uneasiness. After all, it was her wedding day with Calvin Wells, the businessman who had won her heart after a romance of just 8 months. The wedding, however, seemed to have been organized with unusual haste by Uncle Alan, who had managed the family fortune since the untimely death of her parents. She sat in front of the Venetian mirror she had inherited from her mother. While the makeup took shape on her face, she opened the small jewelry box to choose the earrings she would wear. That's when she found a folded note that certainly wasn't there the day before. With trembling hands, she unfolded the yellowed paper. "Listen to Max." Just that. No signature, no explanation. A handwriting she didn't recognize. She felt her heart racing but struggled to maintain a neutral expression in front of the professionals surrounding her. "Are you feeling all right, miss?" asked Sophie, noticing her sudden paleness. "Yes, just a bit of nervousness," Lauren lied, discreetly tucking the note into her purse. Outside the room, raised voices caught her attention. It was Alan arguing with someone in the hallway. She couldn't make out the words, but the tone was definitely tense. "Excuse me, I'll check what's happening," said Mrs. Nelson, hurrying out. Taking advantage of the moment of privacy, Lauren grabbed her cell phone and called August, the horse handler. "Miss Lauren, I was about to call you. Max has been missing since last night." "We've searched the entire property," explained the man, visibly worried. "What do you mean missing?" "He never leaves on his own," Lauren replied, feeling her stomach sink. "The stable door was opened, miss. It doesn't look like he escaped on his own." Before she could ask more questions, the door opened and Alan entered, displaying his usual calculated smile. "My dear niece, you look stunning," he exclaimed, kissing her on the forehead. "Is something wrong? You look worried." "Max has disappeared," she replied dryly. "A horse." "On your wedding day, you're worried about a horse?" Alan laughed, but his eyes remained cold. "I'm sure he'll turn up, but now focus on what really matters. The Wells family has just arrived, and Calvin is eager to see you at the church." That moment, Alan's cell phone rang. He answered quickly and left the room, whispering inaudible words. Lauren closed her eyes, trying to organize her thoughts. Something wasn't right. Max's disappearance, the mysterious note, the unusual commotion in the mansion. Why did she have the feeling she was being manipulated like a piece in a game she didn't understand? When she reopened her eyes, she saw through. The mirror's reflection that Richard, Calvin's brother, was passing through the corridor carrying an envelope. Their gazes briefly met, and she noticed something in his eyes. Guilt? Fear? Before he quickly disappeared. The clock showed 3:00 p.m. In less than 2 hours. She would be at the church, ready to say yes to a man she had known for less than a year, surrounded by people who might not be who they appeared to be. The Paxton mansion was buzzing with final preparations. Hurried employees crossed the corridors, carrying flower arrangements, while the most intimate guests were already arriving for the pre-ceremony cocktail. Lauren, still in her room, felt suffocated not only by the corset of her dress, but by the atmosphere of secrets that seemed to surround this wedding. "I need a moment alone," she asked the professionals, who were adjusting the final details of her dress. Reluctantly, they withdrew. With trembling hands, Lauren picked up the note again. "Listen to Max." What did that mean? How could she listen to a horse that had disappeared? A discreet knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. "May, I come in, miss?" It was Claire's voice, a newly hired young maid. Of course, Claire. The young woman entered with a small package in her hands. She looked around, making sure they were alone, and approached with hesitant steps. "Mrs. Sylvia asked me to deliver this to you," she whispered, extending the package. "She said it's important." "Sylvia Matthews?" Lauren's eyes widened in surprise. "The company's former accountant?" Claire nodded nervously. "She's in Portland," Lauren questioned, astonished. "She asked me not to say anything else, miss. Just deliver this and be careful," Claire concluded, withdrawing quickly. Lauren unwrapped the package, finding a golden flash drive with the initials EP, Edward Paxton, her father. Alongside was a card with a handwritten message: "Some marriages are business arrangements disguised as love. Check the bank transfers from the last 24 hours. Lauren's heart was racing. She took her laptop and inserted the flash drive. A password-protected folder appeared on the screen. What could the password be, she murmured to herself. She tried birthdays, family names, until she looked at the note she had found earlier. "Listen to Max." What if it wasn't just a message, but also a password? She typed, "Listen to Max Paxton," and to her surprise the folder opened. Inside were dozens of documents, mostly financial reports from the family company and audio files. She clicked on one of them, dated 2 weeks before her parents' accident. Her father's voice filled the room. "Alan has been embezzling money from the company for years. I found evidence of suspicious transactions to accounts in the Cayman Islands. Helen and I will confront him tomorrow. I'm leaving these proofs with Sylvia and in a safe place in case something happens to us." Lauren felt the air leave her lungs. The accident that killed her parents occurred precisely the morning after this recording. She heard footsteps approaching and quickly closed the laptop, hiding the flash drive in the lining of her purse. The door opened and Calvin entered, elegant in his dark suit. "I know it's bad luck to see the bride before the wedding, but I needed to talk to you," he said, approaching to kiss her. Lauren instinctively pulled back. "Did something happen?" he asked, frowning. "I was thinking about Max. He's disappeared," she replied, studying his reaction. A strange gleam passed through Calvin's eyes. "I'm sure he'll turn up. Alan has already sent some staff to look for him," he said, visibly uncomfortable. "I need to go now. I have some details to sort out with your uncle before the ceremony." When Calvin left, Lauren felt a chill. The mention of Alan, after what she had just discovered, made her stomach turn. Everything was beginning to make sense. Calvin's sudden interest in her, the rush for the wedding, the constant meetings between him and Alan. Her mind was working frantically when Mrs. Nelson entered. "The room." "Miss, they found horse tracks near St. Francis Cathedral. It could be Max." "What do you mean?" Lauren jumped up. "August just called. Some people saw a black horse in the vicinity of the church. He's going to check." Lauren looked at the clock. Less than an hour until the ceremony. Her instinct screamed to follow Max's tracks, but how could she leave now? The mansion was full of guests, and Alan would certainly stop her. That's when she noticed, through the window, Richard hurriedly getting into a car, still holding the mysterious envelope. On the sidewalk, an elegantly hatted woman was observing the movement. Even from a distance, Lauren recognized that bearing. It was Sylvia Matthews. At that moment, she made a decision. She couldn't simply walk down the aisle as if nothing was happening. She needed to discover the truth, even if it meant risking everything. The clock at the Paxton mansion struck 4:30 p.m. when the first limousines began to depart for St. Francis Cathedral. Lauren remained in her room, contemplating her reflection. In the mirror, the impeccable wedding dress contrasted with the troubled expression on her face. "It's time, miss," announced Mrs. Nelson, holding the delicate lace veil that had belonged to her mother. "Mrs. Nelson," Lauren held the housekeeper's hands, "you've worked for my family throughout my entire life. Tell me the truth. Was what happened to my parents really an accident?" The question caught the housekeeper by surprise. Her eyes filled with tears as she carefully chose her words. "Your mother came to see me the night before." She was agitated. She said she had discovered something serious about the companies. She mentioned that she didn't know who to trust, except for Sylvia Matthews. Mrs. Nelson's voice trembled. The next day, I received news of the accident. Lauren felt as if the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. Why did you never tell me this? After it happened, Alan took over everything. He fired several long-time employees, including Sylvia. I feared for my safety and yours. I thought he was really protecting you. The housekeeper wiped away a tear. But when this wedding was announced, with such haste I began to suspect. Lauren's cell phone vibrated. It was a message from an unknown number. Found evidence in Alan's office. We need to talk. I'll be in the sacristy before the ceremony. Richard Wells. Calvin's brother, she murmured, intrigued by this unexpected alliance. Miss, what do you intend to do? Asked Mrs. Nelson, apprehensive. I'll go to the church as planned, Lauren responded, determined. But first, I need you to do something for me. Quickly, Lauren wrote a message to August, asking him to find Max at any cost, and gave the housekeeper the flash drive she had received. Take this to Sylvia Matthews. She'll be at the cathedral wearing an elegant hat. Tell her I've seen the files and that we need more evidence. The tension was palpable when Lauren finally descended the stairs. Alan was waiting for her in the hall, displaying a smile that didn't reach his eyes. You look absolutely stunning, my dear, he commented, offering his arm to lead her to the limousine. During the journey, Lauren observed the streets of Portland, passing by the window, while her uncle talked incessantly about the illustrious guests who would attend the event. She barely listened to him, concentrating on her plan. I hope you understand the importance of this union for our family, said Alan, interrupting her thoughts. The Wells have powerful connections that can significantly expand our business. And, is that the only reason I'm getting married? For business? Asked Lauren with a challenging tone that surprised even herself. Alan's eyes turned cold as stone. Don't be naive, Lauren. Marriages between families like ours have always had strategic objectives. Your parents understood that. My parents married for love, she retorted, indignant. And see where that led them, he replied dryly, before checking a message on his cell phone. His countenance changed instantly. Richard is at the church. He should be with Calvin. Lauren noticed the concern in his voice and knew she was on the right track. The cathedral was already packed when they arrived. Photographers clustered at the entrance, capturing every detail of the most anticipated social event of the year. Lauren walked slowly through the back of the church to the small room where she would wait for the ceremony to begin. I'll check if everything is in order, said Alan. Don't leave here. As soon as he moved away, Lauren seized the opportunity. She glided through the side corridors until she found the door to the sacristy. Upon entering, she found Richard accompanied by an older man whom she recognized as Mr. Adam, Max's former handler, fired by Alan shortly after her parents' accident. Miss Lauren, Mr. Adam embraced her emotionally. You've grown so much. We have little time, interrupted Richard, visibly nervous. I discovered something about your uncle and my brother that you need to know before walking down the aisle. He opened the envelope he was carrying, revealing documents and photographs. Your father didn't fully trust the banking system to store sensitive information, explained Mr. Adam. He created an alternative method. Max, whispered Lauren, beginning to understand. Exactly. Edward trained that horse to recognize specific commands. In Max's mane, there's a secret compartment where your father hid crucial information, continued the handler. Last night, someone tried to capture Max, probably to destroy the evidence, but he escaped. He's an extremely intelligent animal. Calvin recently discovered this hiding place, added Richard. I overheard a conversation between him and Alan. They planned to take possession of the documents right after the wedding, when you would officially transfer the company shares to your husband, as required by the prenuptial agreement Alan prepared. Lauren's heart was racing as the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Were they involved in my parents' accident? A heavy silence hung in the room before Richard answered. The evidence points to that, and I fear that after they get what they want, you might be next. At that moment, they heard footsteps approaching. Lauren, the ceremony is about to begin. It was Alan's voice on the other side of the door. "1 minute," Lauren replied, trying to buy time while quickly storing the documents in the small purse she carried. Richard and Mr. Adam exchanged apprehensive looks. "There's an exit through the back," whispered the handler. "We can get you out of here now." Lauren hesitated. Escape would be the safest option, but it would mean abandoning the chance to publicly expose the truths she had just discovered. Besides, without the complete evidence that Max carried, it would be her word against Alan's and Calvin's, two powerful men with enough influence to transform her into the villain of the story. "No," she finally decided. "I need to go through with this, but in a different way." Quickly, she elaborated an improvised plan. "Mr. Adam, you need to find Max and bring him to the church. Richard, get a phone for Sylvia and ask her to be prepared to reveal what she knows at the right moment," she instructed, surprising herself with the clarity of thought under pressure. "Lauren!" Alan's voice sounded more impatient. "I'm coming," she responded, adjusting her veil. Before leaving, Richard held her arm. "Be careful. My brother may seem charming, but he would do anything for power. And your uncle," he hesitated. "He's capable of terrible things." Lauren nodded. Understanding the gravity of the situation, she opened the door and found Alan with a severe expression. "Who were you talking to?" he inquired, trying to peek into the sacristy, which was now empty thanks to the alternative exit used by Richard and Mr. Adam. "Just praying, Uncle." "It's tradition for the bride to have a moment of reflection," she responded, with a calmness she didn't feel. Alan studied her for a few seconds, suspicious, but ended up offering his arm to lead her. "Let's go. Everyone is waiting." The interior of St. Francis Cathedral was magnificently decorated. The colored stained glass projected luminous patterns over the guests who filled the pews. At the altar, Calvin waited, impeccable in his dark suit, displaying a confident smile that now seemed more calculating than charming to Lauren's eyes. The orchestra began the traditional wedding march, and all heads turned to admire the bride. With her arm intertwined with Alan's, Lauren advanced down the central aisle, mechanically smiling at the hundreds of faces observing her. Some camera flashes went off, while murmurs of admiration echoed through the sacred space. With each step toward the altar, Lauren felt the weight of the decision she would need to make. Her heart was beating so hard that she feared everyone could hear it. When they reached the altar, Alan kissed her forehead with false affection before handing her over to Calvin, who squeezed her hand with unnecessary force. His smile didn't reach his eyes, which seemed to evaluate her every movement like a predator. The priest began the ceremony with solemn words about the sanctity of matrimony and the indissoluble union of two souls. The irony of those words didn't escape Lauren, who was discreetly searching for Sylvia and Richard among the guests. Suddenly, a growing murmur began to spread from the back of the church. Some people turned, distracted by something that Lauren couldn't see from her position. Calvin noticed the commotion and cast a worried look at Alan, who immediately made a gesture to the security guards positioned near the entrances. That's when the unmistakable sound of hooves on marble flooring echoed throughout the cathedral. The murmurs transformed into exclamations of surprise. Lauren felt a wave of hope invade her. "What is the meaning of this?" vociferated Alan, as guests moved aside to make way for an imposing black horse slowly advancing down the central aisle. It was Max, with his well-groomed mane and a shiny object attached to it. Mr. Adam walked beside him, proud as if escorting a prince. "Remove that animal immediately," ordered Calvin, completely losing his composure. "Wait!" Lauren raised her voice, surprising everyone. "This horse belongs to my family. He has something important to show us." Confusion took over the church. Guests stood up to record the surreal scene with their cell phones. Journalists present for the social coverage of the event realized they were witnessing something much more interesting than a simple wedding. It was at this moment that Sylvia Matthews rose from the last row, her face partially covered by the elegant hat. She walked determinedly to the altar, accompanied by Richard, who carried a folder. "Lauren Paxton cannot get married today," announced Sylvia with a firm voice. "This wedding is a farce, orchestrated to cover up serious crimes committed by Alan. Paxton and Calvin Wells A buzz of astonishment ran through the crowd. The priest, dumbfounded, didn't know how to proceed. "This woman is disturbed," protested Alan, trying to maintain control of the situation. "Security, remove her from here." But before anyone could intervene, Richard opened the folder and began distributing copies of documents to the nearest guests. These are records of illegal bank transfers carried out by Alan Paxton, embezzling millions from the estate he was supposed to manage in Lauren's name, he explained, as the documents passed from hand to hand, causing commotion. "And here is the evidence that the accident that killed Edward and Helen Paxton was carefully planned." Max approached Lauren as if he perfectly understood what was happening. With trembling fingers, she removed the flash drive attached to the horse's mane. "My father knew he was in danger," she said, holding up the small object. "And he found a way to protect this information, entrusting it to the being he loved most after my mother and me. His faithful companion, Max." Calvin's face was livid. Alan, realizing he was losing control of the situation, tried one last desperate move. "This is absurd!" shouted Alan, advancing toward Sylvia. "This woman was fired for incompetence and is trying to take revenge." With unfounded accusations. The cathedral had transformed into a chaotic scene. Guests were divided between those trying to get closer to better understand what was happening and those retreating, embarrassed by the spectacle. The photographers, who had previously been capturing smiles and rehearsed poses, were now capturing expressions of shock and confusion. Lauren remained beside Max, as if the animal transmitted to her the strength necessary to face that moment. Calvin, perceiving the gravity of the situation, tried to recover the posture of a charming man. "Darling, don't listen to these people," he said, approaching with a forced smile. "They're trying to ruin our special day out of envy for what we've built." Lauren looked at him coldly. "And what exactly have we built, Calvin? A relationship based on lies?" Her voice was firm. "How long after the wedding would it take before I met the same fate as my parents?" The mention of the secret plan made Calvin turn even paler. The murmurs in the church increased. "I don't know what you're talking about," he tried to deflect, but the nervousness in his voice was evident. Sylvia took the floor, addressing not just Lauren but all those present. "I worked as an accountant for the Paxton family for 15 years. Edward and Helen were people of integrity who discovered serious irregularities in the companies. They were about to denounce Alan when they suffered the accident." She made quotation marks with her fingers. "I was fired shortly after for knowing too much." Alan tried to interrupt her, but Richard positioned himself between them, allowing Sylvia to continue. "Edward suspected he might be silenced and created an alternative security system. He trained his horse Max, with Mr. Adams' help, to respond to specific commands that would reveal the location of incriminating documents." While in tea, Sylvia spoke. Lauren connected the flash drive to a tablet that Richard handed her. The screen immediately displayed a folder with dozens of meticulously organized files. "Here is the evidence," she announced, turning the screen so that those closest could see. "Illegal bank transfers, fraudulent contracts, and most seriously, communications between my uncle and Calvin, planning not only my parents' fake accident, but also my forced marriage to gain legal control over my inheritance." One of the journalists present quickly approached. "Miss Paxton, are you formally accusing your uncle and your fiancée of involvement in your parents' death?" Before Lauren could respond, Alan completely lost control. "This is a setup," he shouted, advancing threateningly toward Lauren. "You have no idea what you're doing, ungrateful girl." The sudden movement startled Max, who neighed and positioned himself protectively between Lauren and her uncle. The animal's reaction created a moment of tension that was broken by the powerful voice of Mrs. Nelson, who had been observing everything in silence. "I witnessed it," declared the housekeeper, walking to the altar with dignity. "The night before the accident, I heard Alan arguing with someone on the phone. He clearly said, 'Edward and Helen need to be contained before they make the report. Take care of it. And you'll have your share when I take control.'" A sepulchral silence took over the cathedral. The housekeeper's declaration, who had faithfully served the family for decades, carried unquestionable weight. Calvin, seeing that the situation was completely out of control, tried a desperate exit. "Lauren, we can talk privately," he suggested, extending his hand. There are explanations for all this. The explanations will be given to the authorities, intervened a strong voice coming from the church entrance. Everyone turned to see Detective Roman, accompanied by 2 police officers. Richard had discreetly alerted the police even before the ceremony began. We received a report with concerning information about this event, explained the detective, approaching. It seems we arrived at the right moment. Alan, realizing he was cornered, took a desperate action. He pulled out a small gun he kept hidden and pointed it at Lauren. Nobody is going to destroy what I've built, he vociferated, with eyes injected with hatred. I didn't spend years planning everything to lose now. Panic spread through the church. Guests screamed and ducked between the pews. The police drew their weapons but hesitated, fearing for Lauren's safety. That's when Max, demonstrating an almost supernatural perception of the threat, reared violently, striking his front hooves against Alan. The unexpected movement knocked the man down, causing the gun to slide away. In seconds, the police immobilized Alan, while Calvin tried to escape through the back of the church, only to be intercepted by security guards alerted by the detective. Lauren, still shaking from the sequence of events, caressed Max's neck, who now seemed perfectly calm, as if he had fulfilled his mission. You saved my life twice, she whispered in the animal's ear. First by bringing the truth, and now by directly protecting me. The church, which should have witnessed the union of 2 people, had just witnessed the collapse of a carefully constructed farce spanning years. Stunned guests commented among themselves, while journalists tried to record every detail of what would certainly be the most talked-about social event of the year, but for completely different reasons than expected. The hours following the confrontation at the cathedral were intense and exhausting for Lauren. The Portland police station was buzzing with activity as statements were collected and evidence analyzed. Seated in a reserved room, still wearing the now wrinkled wedding dress, Lauren patiently answered Detective Roman's questions. So you didn't suspect anything until this morning? He questioned, taking detailed notes. I always felt something strange about Calvin's sudden interest and the rush to the wedding, but I never imagined it was related to what happened to my parents, replied Lauren, avoiding using the word death, which now seemed too heavy. Sylvia Matthews, seated beside her, added, Edward Paxton began noticing discrepancies in the company accounts approximately 3 months before the accident. He privately approached me to investigate together, keeping everything in absolute secrecy. And why didn't you seek the authorities at the time? Inquired the detective. I tried, Sylvia responded with regret, but I had no concrete evidence, only suspicions. Alan was extremely careful and had powerful connections. Shortly after the accident, I was fired and received veiled threats. I decided to leave Portland for a while, but continued investigating discreetly. As the conversation continued, Lauren observed through the police station window the movement on the street. Curious onlookers and journalists gathered, eager for information about the scandal that already dominated social networks and news. Portals, bride unmasks criminal conspiracy at the altar, and Paxton heiress prevents fraudulent wedding with help from trained horse were some of the most shared headlines. In another room, Alan and Calvin were being interrogated separately. The evidence found on the flash drive and in the documents provided by Richard was overwhelming. Messages, bank transfers, and audio files traced a clear path of fraud, embezzlement, and most seriously, the premeditation of the accident that killed Edward and Helen Paxton. Richard, who testified against his own brother, revealed how he discovered the plan. I found documents in Calvin's office about a month ago. He was always ambitious, but I never imagined he would go to such lengths, he explained, visibly shaken. When I confronted my brother, he tried to convince me to participate in the scheme, offering a share of the profits. That's when I realized the gravity of the situation and decided to act. Mrs. Nelson's testimony was also crucial. The housekeeper described with precision the change in Alan's behavior after taking control of the Paxton companies, the secret meetings and the suspicious modifications he made to the staff, firing old employees loyal to the family. He turned the mansion into a golden prison for Lauren, stated the housekeeper. He controlled who she saw, where she went, who she talked to, all under the pretext of protecting her. It was almost 11 p.m. when Lauren was finally able to leave the police station. A crowd of reporters awaited her at the exit, but police formed a protective cordon to escort her to a car. "Where would you like to go, miss?" asked one of the officers. "It might not be safe to return to the mansion yet." Before she could answer, Lauren spotted Mr. Adam near a tree, holding Max's reins. The black horse seemed calm, as if he were just fulfilling another day's work. "I want to go to him," she said, pointing to the animal. Walking with difficulty because of the dress, Lauren crossed the street under incessant flashes. As she approached Max, she felt a strange sensation of peace amid the chaos of that day. "Thank you, friend," she whispered, caressing the animal's muzzle. "You kept your promise to protect my father's secrets." It was then that she noticed something different. In Max's mane, a small, almost imperceptible compartment, skillfully camouflaged among the black hairs. With delicate fingers, Lauren opened it, finding a microchip sealed in a waterproof casing. "Your father was a very intelligent man," commented Mr. Adam. "He predicted that the flash drive might be found and prepared a backup with even more detailed information." At that moment, Sylvia approached, accompanied by Detective Roman. "We have a long road ahead, Lauren," said the former accountant. "With Alan and Calvin detained, the Paxton companies will need new direction. There are employees, contracts, and business partners who depend on immediate decisions." The reality of the situation finally hit Lauren with full force. It wasn't just the trauma of discovering the truth about her parents or the shock of being used in such a macabre plan. It was the sudden responsibility that fell on her shoulders, taking control of a business empire built over generations. "I don't know if I'm prepared for this," she admitted, suddenly feeling very young and inexperienced. "No one is at the beginning," Sylvia replied gently, "but you won't be alone. Edward and Helen trained trusted people over the years. Many were pushed away by Alan, but are willing to return to help you." The detective added, "The investigation is just beginning, Miss Paxton. We'll likely find more people involved in this scheme. You'll need to be prepared to testify several times in the coming months." Lauren took a deep breath, trying to process everything. The day that should have marked the beginning of a life as Calvin Wells' wife had transformed into the first day of a completely different journey, the search for justice and the rebuilding of her family's legacy. 3 months passed since the fateful non-wedding day. Portland was experiencing the height of spring, with flowering trees beautifying the city's streets and squares. The Paxton Mansion, once a symbol of cold opulence under Alan's administration, was gaining new life and purpose. Lauren observed the sunrise from her balcony, a steaming cup of tea in her hands. She wore simple clothes, quite different from the sophisticated outfits her uncle had insisted she wear in public. Her hair, once always impeccably styled, fell loose over her shoulders. There was a serenity in her gaze that contrasted with the insecure young woman of 3 months ago. "Miss, the journalists are already arriving," announced Claire, the young maid who had delivered Sylvia's package on the wedding day and now occupied a position of trust in the house. "Thank you, Claire." "I'll be ready in a few minutes," Lauren replied, finishing her tea. This would be the first press conference she would grant since the scandal. For months she had refused to speak publicly, focusing on collaborating with the investigations and understanding the family businesses. But it was time to turn the page. In the mansion's spacious garden, chairs were arranged to accommodate the press. A small platform was set up under the shade of a century-old tree. In the background, Max grazed peacefully, now a celebrity for his role in revealing the conspiracy. Promptly at 10 a.m., Lauren appeared in the garden accompanied by Sylvia Matthews, now officially reinstated as financial director of Paxton Enterprises, and by Richard Wells, who had surprisingly become a valuable ally in the restructuring of the business. "Good morning, everyone," Lauren greeted, taking her place on the platform. "I thank you for your presence at this important moment for my family and for all the people who depend on Paxton Enterprises." Cameras clicked incessantly, capturing the new image of one who had become a symbol of resilience and courage for many. "In recent months, we have intensely collaborated with the authorities to clarify the crimes committed by my uncle, Alan Paxton, and his accomplice, Calvin Wells," she continued with a firm voice. The investigations revealed an embezzlement scheme that extended for more than a decade and involved other people who will also be held legally accountable for their actions. A journalist raised his hand. Miss Paxton, there are rumors that the evidence found with your horse revealed much more than financial fraud. Is it true that your father documented direct threats to his and your mother's lives? Lauren hesitated briefly before responding. The evidence is part of an ongoing judicial process, but I can confirm that my father perceived the danger he was in and took measures to protect the truth. He knew Max would be the perfect guardian for such sensitive information because he was the only being he fully trusted besides my mother and me. Another reporter questioned, "How did you deal emotionally with these revelations?" Discovering that people so close to you planned something so terrible against your family. It was devastating, admitted Lauren, allowing herself to show vulnerability. I questioned everything I believed in, everyone around me, but I also discovered allies where I least expected. She briefly looked at Richard. This experience taught me that the truth, however painful, is liberating. Sylvia took the floor to present more practical aspects. Today, we are announcing the creation of the Edward and Helen Paxton Foundation, which will allocate part of the company's profits to corporate transparency projects and protection for fraud whistleblowers, she explained. Additionally, all group companies will undergo independent semi-annual audits with public results. Richard added, the commercial partnerships established during Alan's management are being reviewed. Some have already been terminated for involving questionable practices or companies with dubious history. The press conference continued for another hour, with questions about the future of the business, the ongoing judicial processes, and Lauren's personal projects. To conclude, she said, I would like to announce that part of the property will be transformed into a sanctuary for rescued horses. The Max Sanctuary project will offer shelter and care to animals that have suffered mistreatment or abandonment. The journalists applauded the initiative, while Max, as if understanding he was being honored, raised his head and neighed, drawing smiles from those present. After the press conference, Lauren walked to the stable accompanied by Mr. Adam, who had been rehired as manager of the future sanctuary. Your father would be proud, my girl, commented the handler, emotional. He always said you had your mother's strength and his integrity. Sometimes I feel like they're still guiding me, you know, Lauren confided, caressing Max. In the most difficult moments of these past months, when everything seemed too heavy, I dreamed of them. That same day, in the afternoon, Lauren received an unexpected visit in her office, Mrs. Nelson accompanied by an elderly lady who seemed vaguely familiar to her. This is Mrs. Teresa, my cousin, the housekeeper introduced. Oh, so she worked as a nurse at the hospital on the day when... She hesitated. On the day of my parents' accident, Lauren completed gently. The elderly lady held a yellowed envelope with trembling hands. Your mother was conscious when she arrived at the hospital, my dear, revealed Mrs. Teresa. For just a few minutes. She gave me this and made me promise to keep it until it was safe to deliver it to you. With everything that's happened recently, I felt the time had finally come. With a racing heart, Lauren opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter from her mother and an old key. My beloved daughter, the letter began, if you are reading this, it means my suspicions were confirmed. Don't trust Alan. The truth about our family is kept where we found our greatest treasure. You will know where to look when the time comes. Everything we did was out of love for you. Be strong, be just, be free. The greatest treasure, Lauren murmured, tears blurring her vision. Mrs. Nelson smiled tenderly. The place where they found you, child. The Sunshine Orphanage, where you were when they decided to adopt you. The revelation hit Lauren like a wave. She had never hidden her adoptive origins, but rarely spoke about the subject. Her parents always made a point of celebrating the day they met her as the happiest day of their lives. They always said it was at that orphanage that they found the true meaning of family, Lauren remembered, wiping away her tears. The old key seemed to burn in her hand, a new mystery to be unraveled. But unlike the dark secrets she had discovered on her wedding day, this one seemed laden with love and hope. The following morning, Lauren drove her own car for the first time in years. Alan had always insisted that a Paxton Fortune Heiress should be driven by professional drivers, but she secretly kept her driver's license updated, a small act of rebellion that now proved valuable. The Sunshine Orphanage was located on the outskirts of Portland, in an old mansion surrounded by leafy trees. Much had changed since the last time Lauren had been there at 12, when her parents took her to show where their family story had begun. The place was more colorful, with a modern playground and a community garden. Children ran around the courtyard, filling the environment with genuine laughter. "Can I help you?" asked a young educator upon seeing Lauren contemplating the place. "I'm looking for Sister Constance. Does she still work here?" Lauren asked, hopeful. The young woman smiled. "Sister Constance is almost 90 years old, but she's still going. Strong. She should be in the library. Would you like me to take you there?" Lauren followed the educator through corridors decorated with children's drawings until they reached a cozy room filled with books. Seated in a worn leather armchair was a white-haired lady with lively eyes, reading stories to a small group of children. Upon seeing Lauren at the door, the elderly woman interrupted her reading, and her eyes widened in recognition. "Children, let's take a break," she announced with a serene voice. "I have an important visitor." The children obediently dispersed, casting curious glances at Lauren. "After so many years, you've finally returned," said Sister Constance, extending her wrinkled hands. "I knew this day would come. Helen warned me." Lauren approached, emotional. "You remember me? How could I forget? You were special from the first day. And after Edward and Helen took you, they returned every year to help our institution, always speaking of you with such pride." Lauren showed the key found in her mother's letter. "I believe this opens something kept here." Sister Constance nodded. "Follow me." The elderly woman led her to a small room at the back of the library. With her own set of keys, she unlocked the door, revealing an environment that served as an archive. Metal shelves stored folders organized by dates. "Here we keep the orphanage's historical records and some special belongings left in our care," explained the nun, heading to a small safe embedded in the wall. "Your mother left something here. 2 weeks before the accident, she said it was a precaution." The key Lauren carried fit perfectly into the safe's lock. Inside was a carved wooden box with the initials EHP, Edward and Helen Paxton. "I'll take you to the garden," offered Sister Constance. "You'll have privacy there to explore what your parents saved." Seated on a bench under a flowering tree, Lauren carefully opened the box. Inside she found a diary bound in blue leather, a flash drive similar to the one Max carried, several photographs and legal documents. The diary contained detailed records made by her mother about the discoveries they made regarding Alan's embezzlements. One passage caught her attention. "Each time we confront Alan with evidence, he becomes more aggressive. Edward fears our time is running out. Today, we decided to take drastic measures to protect Lauren and ensure that the truth eventually comes to light. We've created several repositories of evidence. Max will carry part of them. Sylvia will keep another part, and I'll leave the rest with Sister Constance, along with the most important instructions about the special fund that Edward and I secretly created for Lauren." Intrigued, Lauren examined the legal documents. They were the deed to an educational foundation established in her name in a European country, completely unknown to Alan. A considerable amount had been legally transferred to this foundation. Over the years, intended to finance social and educational projects chosen by Lauren when she reached the necessary maturity. Among the photographs, one in particular caught her attention. Her parents with her as a baby, standing exactly where she was now, under the same tree. On the back of the photo, a message written by her father. "Here we began our true fortune. Money is fleeting. Businesses come and go, but love builds the only legacy that matters." Lauren felt a profound peace envelop her. Her parents had not only tried to protect her physically, but had also preserved values they considered essential, creating an alternative path in case the worst happened. A smaller envelope contained a letter dated just 3 days before the accident. "Dear Lauren, if this letter has reached your hands, it means our suspicions were confirmed, and we couldn't be by your side as we would have liked. Forgive us for not having confronted Alan earlier. Perhaps we were naive in believing we could resolve everything within the family. The Paxton Empire was built by your grandfather with honest work, but we know that power and money can corrupt even blood ties. We don't want you to feel obligated to carry a burden you didn't choose. The foundation we created will give you the freedom to decide your own path, regardless of what happens with the companies. You, our beloved daughter, were our most correct choice. Always remember, family is not defined by blood, but by the love we share. It was here at this orphanage that we learned the true meaning of that word. Whatever path you choose, know that our love for you transcends any distance. Eternally. Yours, Mom and Dad. Tears flowed freely down Lauren's face as she absorbed the meaning of those words. For a moment, she felt her parents' presence around her, like an invisible embrace that comforted and strengthened her. Sister Constance approached silently, sitting beside her. They were extraordinary people, commented the elderly woman. They came here regularly, not just to make donations, but to spend time with the children. Edward always said the greatest inheritance they could leave you was the example of compassion. And they did, replied Lauren, drying her tears. Now I understand why they always encouraged me to value people more than things. Upon returning to the mansion, Lauren made a decision. She gathered her closest collaborators, Sylvia, Richard, Mrs. Nelson, and Mr. Adam. I discovered today that my parents created a parallel foundation, unconnected to the Paxton companies, she announced. They gave me the freedom to choose my own path. And what will your decision be? Asked Sylvia, concerned. The companies still need leadership. Lauren smiled with serenity. I'll divide my time between both projects. Paxton Enterprises will be restructured with a focus on ethical and sustainable practices, with you, Sylvia, as CEO. Richard will oversee the transition of commercial partnerships. As for me, I'll personally dedicate myself to the foundation, starting with the Sunshine Orphanage, which will be completely renovated and expanded. Mrs. Nelson squeezed Lauren's hands with pride. Your parents would be radiant, my girl. The following morning, a sunny Sunday, Lauren mounted Max and rode to the highest point of the property, where a panoramic view of Portland unfolded. The horse seemed to sense her lighter state of mind, trotting with renewed energy. On the horizon, the city that had witnessed so much pain now offered infinite possibilities. The journey wouldn't be easy. The judicial processes against Alan and Calvin would continue for months, perhaps years, and the restructuring of the companies would require hard work. But for the first time since that fateful day at the church, Lauren felt truly free. Thank you, Max, she whispered, caressing the animal's mane that had become a symbol of her own resilience. You not only saved my life, but helped me discover its true meaning. The horse neighed softly as if understanding. Together they contemplated the dawn of a new day, while the legacy of love left by Edward and Helen Paxton blossomed into renewed hope.